This is the ZNS Network, providing radio and high-definition television services for the entire Bahamas. ZNS Network is operated by the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas. It is located at Harcourt Rusty Bethel Drive, Centerville, Nassau. Our programming is designed to inform, educate, and entertain. We invite you to join us.
The following is the preamble of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, which was drafted on June 20th, 1973, and came into effect on July 10th, 1973. Whereas, 481 years ago, the rediscovery of this family of islands, rocks and keys, heralded the rebirth of the New World. And whereas the people of this family of islands, recognizing that the preservation of their freedom will be guaranteed by a national commitment to self-discipline, industry, loyalty, unity, and an abiding respect for Christian values and the rule of law. Now know ye therefore, we the inheritors of and successors to this family of islands, recognizing the supremacy of God and believing in the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual, do hereby proclaim in solemn praise the establishment of a free and democratic sovereign nation founded on spiritual values and in which no man, woman, or child shall ever be slave or bondsman to anyone, or their labor exploited, or their lives frustrated by deprivation, and do hereby provide by these articles for the indivisible unity and creation under God of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Public service announcement is brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
Parents, school is closed, but your children are not on vacation. As much as possible, spend time reviewing and helping them to organize their virtual lessons. Try to find a structured time each day for study and for recreation. Remember, learning never stops.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
You're watching the ZNS Network, the People's Station.
Be real about the challenges we face so that we can be effective in addressing them. I assure the Bahamian people that this government is up to the challenge. We are not daunted by the task. The Bahamian people gave us a mandate to lead, and we will never shirk from our responsibilities. We will never cower to the might of any storm, hidden or in plain sight. We have a firm grasp on the steering wheel, and you can be assured that this minister-led administration will captain this ship until we reach the safe harbor.
Challenging times ahead as COVID-19 applies increasing pressure on the country's finances. Good morning, everyone. I'm Akush Lapinder, and this is the Morning Edition. Initial estimates put the fallout from COVID-19 at $1 billion in losses. At the time, that was the worst-case scenario. Things have since changed, with the complete shutdown of the tourism industry much more dire if the threat of COVID-19 persists. To put it bluntly, as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Turnquist did in the House of Assembly Monday morning, there are going to be very challenging days ahead for all. Still, in the face of it, the Minister is optimistic.
I have no doubt the Bahamian economy will bounce back. And when it does, we want no one to be left behind. We want no one to succumb to the most severe effects of COVID-19, health-wise or financial-wise. We want everyone to be able to rise together. The policy measures we have put in place so far are supporting Bahamians in this spirit, and we will adjust and adapt our response as the situation demands.
Now, those measures include a tax credit and tax deferral employment retention program that provides businesses with payroll support. The idea is to retain up to 10,000 jobs.
Under this program, qualifying businesses can receive assistance under a tax credit and tax deferral to help cover payroll expenses. The program allows businesses to defer the payment of certain taxes and to benefit from a tax credit up to $300,000 in each instance. This accommodation is specifically to provide businesses with cash flow to preserve current employment levels. Businesses will have to commit to utilization of the tax credit solely for the purposes of covering payroll emoluments.
Now, the Deputy Prime Minister not alone in his thinking that tough times are ahead. Painfully aware of that reality, the opposition's deputy leader and Point finance man, Chester Cooper, says as the Bahamas faces what he says could be an economic calamity, he suggested the government identify borrowing facilities in the area of $1 to $2 billion to shore up the economy.
This can be a combination of direct borrowing through public-private partnerships for projects that will create much-needed jobs and stimulate the domestic economy. If the crisis is shorter or flatter than we now anticipate, any excess may be used to pay down existing higher interest debt, reducing future debt service pressure. $1 billion, perhaps, can be used for temporary employment programs. These can be used to enhance our physical and virtual infrastructure. This turning point must be for all of us to innovate and to reimagine a more progressive and competitive Bahamas.
At least $150 million of the borrowed funds, he added, should be used to build a state-of-the-art digital infrastructure.
We must set the example for business, many of whom have doggedly stuck to a brick-and-mortar business model and were caught flat-footed, unable to adjust as things suddenly transitioned. The government should take $250 million and invest immediately in real food security. Bamsi is a good model, but Andros is primed for growth in this area and others.
Meantime, in the face of COVID-19, the Bahamas has a strong representation in the foreign services. Belgium, like the rest of the world, is battling the virus. Here's Ambassador-designate to the Kingdom of Belgium and Head of Mission at the European Union, Her Excellency Maria O'Brien.
We're truly saddened to experience things firsthand in the European Union as we witness the severity of its impact. But note that we stand in solidarity with the decisions of the Bahamas government. I need to reiterate to my fellow Bahamians to watch the world and learn from their actions so that we can preserve the lives in our immensely small and close-knit community while we still have the opportunity to do so. But in the midst of it all, I remain hopeful that we will get through it as a nation if we continue to adhere to the authorities and accept our temporary living conditions.
The team in Belgium continues to operate remotely, engaged in meetings at various levels of interest to the Bahamas and the European Union.
I am happy to confirm that our embassy team is healthy and have not in any way been affected by the coronavirus. Our team remains secured at home in self-isolation, adhering to Belgian authorities, and we are adjusting day to day to our new lifestyle with 24-hour support to one another and daily check-ins to ensure that we are all physically and mentally healthy. In order to keep a sense of normalcy, we have weekly meetings to address pressing matters and any other affairs of the embassy that we may deem pertinent at the time. We remain active in meetings with international organizations, more specifically with the region. Lots of Zoom meetings to keep us up to date with the international community on a consistent basis. Over the past 3 weeks, we have been in contact with one Bahamian student, and she remains safe and unaffected by COVID-19, and so we are happy to report that she is healthy and in good spirits.
Coming up in the morning edition, how health officials are tracking COVID-19 cases to prevent the spread of the disease across the country.
The Ministry of Health is working to ensure the safety of the Bahamian people. Help us minimize the risk that coronavirus poses to citizens, residents, and visitors by following these 5 easy steps. Step 1. Wet your hands with clean water, apply soap and lather for 20 seconds by rubbing them together. Include the top of your hands between your fingers and under your fingernails. Rinse your hands under clean water, then dry them with a paper towel or air dry them. Remember to wash your hands before and after eating, preparing a meal, changing a diaper, or caring for the sick, and always after using the bathroom, touching money, shaking hands, or taking out the trash. Step 2. Cough and sneeze in your elbow or upper sleeve, not in your hands, not in the air. Or you can cover your nose and mouth with a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Put your used tissue in the trash bin when you're finished. Remember to wash your hands with soap and clean water after you cough or sneeze. Also, remember never to spit on the ground, roads, or in open spaces. Step 3. Ensure that raw meat is properly handled and cooked thoroughly. Step 4. Avoid sharing drinking glasses, eating utensils like spoons and forks, or sharing personal items such as toothbrushes and towels. Germs can live on surfaces we touch, so wipe and disinfect surfaces where germs can live, and keep your surroundings clean. Step 5. Avoid close contact with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. Should you or anyone you know feel that you have been exposed to the coronavirus, contact the surveillance unit of the Ministry of Health immediately. To reach us, call 502-4776, 502-4790, or 502-4737. We want Bahamians and those that live with and visit us to remain safe from the coronavirus. To do this, we need the help of each and every one of you to follow the simple steps we have shared. Let's stay safe, Bahamas.
Welcome back to the morning edition. The number of COVID-19 cases remain at 14, but over 200 people are in quarantine here. With us to discuss the numbers and what's being done by the health team is Deputy Medical Officer Dr. Delon Brennan. Dr. Brennan, you're certainly not a stranger to the morning edition, but as usual, good morning. Now, I understand you're part of a task force. Tell us some more about that in terms of the surveillance.
Sure. The Ministry of Health has a team of surveillance officers, which would include physicians, nurses, and other support staff that are out there making sure that we are searching out where the cases are, looking for the contacts of those cases, looking to see are there other people who are having symptoms that we just haven't presented themselves to medical care, and we are trying to make sure that we have enough testing going on to make sure the Bahamian populace is protected, but also that those people are taking on the measures that are important to make sure that they're not then acting as vectors to pass it on to others as well.
On that note, how is contact tracing? How is that going?
I think our efforts are going very well. I think it's a two-part or a two-pronged approach. One is making sure that we get as many contacts from each of the individual cases that we know so far. And so for each of those cases, we try to make sure that we find out where they live, where they work, if they socialize anywhere, if they're going to church, if, all of those activities that may have happened either during the course of their illness or prior to even when they knew they had symptoms. And then once they give us a sort of a round number of those people, they can then, that's just a general count of people. Then we try to drill down to actual phone numbers or email addresses and how we can get in contact with those people. Once we do that, then we actually send people out, or we start making phone calls to get in contact with them. We find out how they're doing, do they have any symptoms, do they know anyone else in their area who's been sick, and then there are times where we need to go out and visit them as well. So we may send out members of our team to go in and actually do temperature checks with them if necessary, and if they have major symptoms, then we may need to actually do testing at that time. So it's really a social distancing kind of approach where we will do phone calls or even WhatsApp messaging or video conferencing with them, but then if we need to go in, we make sure our healthcare providers are protected, but they may actually need to do visits with people as well to, one, make sure they're actually in place where they're supposed to be, but also to then physically check on their status as well.
How compliant have you found those who are being tested to be in terms of being self-isolated?
I would say the majority of people who we come into contact with, more than 95% of people, are in place where they're supposed to be. I think the fact that the government has rolled out these additional policies of, minimizing the people who have to go out to businesses and closing down, restaurants and places where people would socialize has added to that fact. And so now people tend to be at home or very close to their home. They may be in their yard, they may be at a relative's house, but, some close relative. And so what we try to do is make sure that people understand why it's so important that they're not out and socializing, because not only could they be a contact, but they could be a case that is asymptomatic. And regardless if you are well during that time period, if you're not at home, you have the ability to then spread it to others. And so a lot of it is really just education. It isn't a lot of health care that goes on with that contact. It is really public health education that goes on and letting them know why it's so important.
You bring up another point in terms of people going by, let's say, close relatives. The Prime Minister just made the point that COVID-19 is now, we find in the Bahamas community, spread. Is it time to put further restrictions on who we can come in contact with? I know we've closed down the restaurants, the shopping plazas, churches and everything like that, but is there any way to further restrict who we come in contact with?
I think it's very difficult at this stage for us to be able to restrict even more. I think we put in the appropriate policies. It's really one, enforcement of those policies. I think people still need to get food. In order to get food, you need money sometimes to get to get it. So I think the fact that you need to have cash on hand or be able to transact in that way means banks, or at least access to money, is going to be important as well. The fact is realistically, it isn't just about the policies. One of the statements that's often made is you can't legislate morality. Right. You really have to make sure that we as a people are taking seriously the policies that are put in place. So if we want this to stop, if we want to be able to move back to a regular lifestyle, we want to be able to go out, go to entertainment places, want to be able to go to the beach, one of the things you're going to have to do is make sure during this time period we restrict those activities, we restrict our own movements, because it's only us that can make that difference. No amount of legislation is going to change that. But if we say we're serious about stopping the spread, the virus isn't just going to jump from one person to the other. It requires our movement and being around other people for it to propagate. And so if we stop that movement, we can realistically let people run their course of disease without infecting anyone else. You would have halted the transmission, and we could realistically, within a few weeks to a few months, go back to our regular lives.
How are things going on the family islands in terms of contact tracing there?
The good thing is right now we only have known cases in Grand Bahama. And so while we are still continuing our surveillance activities throughout the family islands, especially our major family islands that are known to have not just Bahamian residents there, but they also have visitors who may have come in and now aren't necessarily easily able to transit back to their own homes, our healthcare providers on those areas are very vigilant about making sure they screen, they are assessing people's symptoms, and if there's an issue, they then address it from there. They let us know from the national level. And if they need additional testing supplies, if they need additional equipment to be able to help them out, then we provide it from that level. But it's sort of a spoken wheel, and so that we send out resources where necessary, but we don't want resources to be out in a particular area and have to recall those in order to send it on, because that would cause a delay. So I think it's going well. We can always look for additional issues, additional holes in the system, but as we find them, we try to plug them so that we can be as efficient in our methods as possible.
There is a concern, I see it online, that COVID-19 can fade away in the summer months, in the upcoming summer months, and perhaps make a possible return later this year in the fall. You want to speak to that for us?
I think what we see a lot of times with just respiratory illnesses as a whole, I won't say specifically for coronavirus in particular, but in this coronavirus, because we're still learning so much about the epidemiology related to it. But when we look at other coronaviruses, even the common cold, which can be caused by a coronavirus, and other viruses like adenovirus and rhinovirus, what we see is there are times in usually seasonal where you have more infections, and then it kind of tails off. For us, it usually happens during the summertime, where in tropical areas, people just aren't in the same places, they aren't crowded upon each other. So it's not necessarily a weather-related thing, except that when it gets cold, people are more likely to huddle indoors and be closer to each other, and it makes it easier for it to spread from one person to the other. Whereas during the summertime, people are less likely to be indoors. They are outside, they are enjoying the outside, and they are more likely to be spaced out from each other, and that allows us to not necessarily pass the viruses or other microorganisms on from one person to the other as easily.
What's the state of those in hospital here? I think there are 2.
Correct.
Are they still stable? And when is it anticipated that they would be released?
The 2 persons who are in hospital right now are very stable. They are requiring minimal amount of support. So we provide them with oxygen as needed. They may get IV fluids, just making sure they hydrate, they get a good diet. There's no particular medications that we are giving to them because there's just no real treatment that has been proven at present. There are lots of things that are being trialed around the world, but right now, we're just making sure we support them through the course of their illness. Much like our initial case that was hospitalized, they continue to be stable and are improving, so we're hoping and praying that they continue to do just as well, and we expect that within another few days, as long as they continue on the same track, they too will be able to be discharged and go back home and then continue to convalesce there.
Now this must be taxing on you and your team. How are you guys dealing with it in terms of not just in terms of protecting yourself, but having to go home to your families and your mental health, keeping that stable, all of it?
I think it's a fine balance between putting in the work. I think much like any other workplace, there are times where you're busier rather than other times. And this is what we live for. This is what we work to do. So as public health officials, it's unfortunate, but when you have something like this happen, this is when you kick into full gear. You use all of your training, all of your expertise, your ability to learn information quickly and then apply it in the field to be able to train others to appropriately address the healthcare need as well. So whether those are people giving acute care, whether those people who are doing data management, those who are doing research around it, you try to make sure that everyone's on board with the same aim in place, is to get us to the end point with as minimal amount of disease that affects the population and with as minimal side effects and unfortunate, whether that is morbidity, having people suffer, illnesses that are secondary to it, or death, to go along with it. We want to minimize those effects. So we're out there, and we're grinding every day. I mean, it hasn't been a day off for the Ministry of Health and the Department of Public Health in the activities. But the thing is, what we're seeing is we're seeing the effects that go along with that. We know that the policymakers are taking it seriously from our advice, and they're putting in policies to help us. We know that the acute care providers are doing their job and training each other and delivering services that we know are going to slow down the trend and take great care of the people who are in front of them. And we're making sure that the community is informed as well, because while it is a very stressful situation to see things around you sort of shut down, the world around you shut down, it's being informed that lets you know why that's happening and what the trajectory likely is, and to see recovery happening in some countries. Let's say China, where this was the big worry and where we were, concerned about it and teaching people this is what could happen down the road. But now when you see China is making recovery and they're getting back to normal life, while you may be going through it at the time, you know that there is some sort of light at the end of this tunnel, that things will get better. It's how we treat each other, how we pay attention to the policies and actually implement them, that's going to get us either going well to that light at the end, or will we suffer a lot of issues and disease before we get there.
Now, you talk about stress. One final question. What do you plan to do once this is all over? The first thing you're going to do?
I think once the opportunity presents, I'm jumping on a plane. I don't know where I'm going yet. I would love to go to just a beach on a family island. I will continue to social distance and be there, but just to be able to get away for a little bit would be much appreciated.
Well, thanks again. That's Dr. DeLon Brennan joining us here on the Morning Edition. While essential services remain active in the wake of COVID-19, our Lloyd Allen connecting with the Executive Director of Bahamas Waste Management via Zoom on efforts to collect waste throughout the capital.
One of those emergency services that remain operational are waste collection services. On the line, we have Frank DeCardenas. He is the Managing Director from Bahamas Waste. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing? Thank you for reaching out.
Definitely. So talk to us. Obviously, we've been in the trenches now for several days. How have your operations been developing as far as collection and protection of workers?
Two very important issues, of course, and it's been very fluid, especially this week. Our health and safety team has been working on this for at least 2 weeks, not only for the workers outside, but the staff inside. They've all been issued protective gear, the sanitizers, the gloves, masks, tried to explain to them that it's in their best interest to make sure that they continue safe practices of washing hands and changing gloves when needed.
Now, as far as Bahamas Waste Management, obviously your teams on the roads have been trained to handle medical waste, but in the wake of COVID-19, any special precautions, have you issued any special precautions for those persons on the road in collecting any waste? Because really and truly, most waste can be considered hazardous at this point. So any special precautions for those workers?
Absolutely. The waste team have always had special requirements as far as handling their waste. We have upped the game right now because we're actually picking up from the PMH, the quarantine area. So they're wearing hazmat suits, gloves, goggles, sanitizers, and they have to, we did a pickup last week and we basically had to have a change of clothes, like 3 or 4 changes of clothes. By the time they get into the truck, out of the truck, load the hazmat material until it gets to our facility and gets into the autoclave. So they're taking every precaution.
Any special advice you'd want to give to the public as far as how to dispose of waste so that when your team arrives, everything can be collected?
You know, our residential goes on as normal. I'm hoping that if anybody is not feeling well and are self-quarantined, that they're disposing of their you know, whatever tissues and stuff in plastic bags and sealing them. Again, most of our guys are only handling the bins, but they're operating with masks and gloves and taking every precaution.
But behind the scenes, once the trash is collected, give us a bit more information as to what is your protocol for dealing with that.
Every drop of medical waste is, when we treat it, it's all sterile. So that actually, it goes into a compactor and it gets taken into a special section of the landfill. All the other waste is all separated at the landfill. You have your construction and demolition waste. You have your green waste. You have tires, and you have your municipal waste. So, like most of the residential waste, you know, and it's a long time in coming, but they're doing a great job at the landfill. As soon as we discharge our waste into the landfill, they're right there to cover the material, to compact it and cover it. So it's going quite well at the landfill.
And finally, like many of us here at the corporation, we're watching international reports from the World Health Organization, the CDC. Are you observing any international best practices as far as how you continue to handle waste?
Absolutely. We're involved in a lot of industry associations, and they're all updating us with their with their safety standards and stuff, and then we're passing that on to our operations and health and safety. So, you know, we're keeping up with everything that we possibly can and trying to stay ahead of the curve.
And that was Francisco de Cardenas from the Bahamas Waste Managing. He's the managing director. Lloyd Allen for the Morning Edition.
Well, thanks, Lloyd. The first full day in office for newly appointed Commissioner of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Paul Roll. Roll succeeds now retired Commissioner Anthony Ferguson, who handed over the office to his contemporary during a brief ceremony at the Paul Ferguson Conference Centre at the police headquarters yesterday that followed social distancing protocols. Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Dr. Hubert Minnis, among those congratulating the new commissioner, admonishing him to maintain law and order throughout the Bahamas. In his speech, Commissioner Roll highlighted the crimes impacting the economy.
Financial crimes such as fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft, to name a few, have been a pivotal issue in the global arena for decades. While authorities constantly are looking for ways to track down and prevent criminals, criminals are always developing innovative tactics in order to stay ahead. This continues to be of grave concern to law enforcement. We are equally concerned about laundering of the proceeds from crimes. Money laundering is a process vital to making crime worthwhile.
Well, if you're pregnant and concerned about COVID-19, we have some answers for you when the Morning Edition returns.
The following is a public service announcement by the Honorable Lanisha T. Roll, Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
The Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture is that arm of government responsible for facilitating social development through youth, sports and culturally engaging activities. This is the voice of your Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, Lanisha Roll, announcing the ministry's temporary electronic social development activity platform. The spread of COVID-19 or the coronavirus has resulted in the government's implementation of public health and safety measures, inclusive of quarantines, curfew, social distancing, and stringent hygiene practices. These measures are proactive and have effectively proven to limit the spread of the disease among people. We appreciate that being in confined spaces for long periods can be uncomfortable. Hence, for the benefit of the general public, over the next few days, the ministry will electronically publish and share safe social distancing activities that lend themselves to continued social development, albeit in confined spaces. Departments under our remit will provide guidelines for small team-building activities, at-home games for youth and family, effective indoor and yard exercises, as well as activities for cultural engagement through quick and easy projects that promote artistic expression. These communications can be accessed via the ministry's webpage and Facebook media for your enjoyment. Remember that how well and how soon we defeat this pandemic depends on how all of us cooperate to protect each of us. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, I thank every citizen, resident, and guest within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for exercising patience, understanding, and cooperation during this period.
This was a public service announcement by the Honorable Lanisha T. Roll, the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and this television station.
This public service announcement is brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
School is closed, but we are not on vacation. Remember to stay at home to avoid the spread of COVID-19. Social distancing is very important. Remember, it's safer and smarter.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
Well, COVID-19 has touched various sectors of our society. This morning, we are talking pregnancy and safe delivery under the COVID-19 atmosphere. With us is consultant obstetrician and gynecologist, Dr. Andrea Griffith-Bowe. Dr. Bowe, welcome to the Morning Edition.
Morning.
I think the first things first, are pregnant women more at risk for COVID-19?
I guess we have to understand that the data that we currently have access to is basically based on a few months of experience with COVID-19. And robust data is generally based on millions and millions of cases. So from what we can see from the cases thus far, pregnant women are no more at risk than non-pregnant women for coronavirus infection.
Well, that's a good thing for them to know there. What are the symptoms in pregnant women, though, in terms of COVID-19, if they were to contract it?
Excellent question. So basically the symptoms of COVID-19 in pregnancy are identical to those of the non-pregnant women. So basically you're looking at primarily the milder symptoms, the cold, the cough, the fever, runny nose, the shortness of breath. And they have recently added nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, loss of taste, as well as loss of smell to the characteristics of the presentation of cases. And so for the most part, pregnant women, the majority of pregnant women will present with mild symptoms as per the general population. So for the most part, they would have mild symptoms. About 15% or so would have moderate symptoms, and less than 5% will have the more severe symptoms. So typically, the presentation mirrors that of the general population for the pregnant women.
What are the risks to a baby if the mother were to contract COVID-19? Can the baby be infected before delivery?
Correct. Well, at this time, we're building our knowledge base. And we have very few or limited series being published with regards to pregnancy and COVID-19. the majority of the series suggests that there is no transmission from the mother to the unborn infant. However, there are a few small series, limited series, that suggest maybe they would have had maybe 2 or 3 infants that might have been infected during the pregnancy. But for the most part, the advice that we're giving to pregnant mothers is that it seems less likely that the infant can be infected during the pregnancy. It is more likely that the infant could be exposed to the mother during her process of caring for the infant, for example, during breastfeeding and sanitizing the infant, etc.
On that note, then, what precautionary measures should a new mother be taking?
So moms should sanitize their hands, wash their hands as advised for 20 seconds with soap prior to caring for the infant. And this is prior to cleaning the infant, dressing the infant, breastfeeding the infant. Prior to pumping any breast milk, the breast pump should be sanitized, cleaned thoroughly, and it should be cleaned immediately after use. It's also advised that mothers should wear a mask, if possible, during breastfeeding to avoid the exposure of the infant to her respiratory droplets.
Well, we'll continue our discussion tomorrow, but what are those key areas we should be highlighting for pregnant women?
It is very important for pregnant women to try to maintain a healthy pregnancy, maintain good nutritional status, a good healthy diet, to get as much exercise that she can within the limited confines of her environs. It's important to continually to avoid the unhealthy things that pregnant women typically would avoid in pregnancy, like alcohol and tobacco. It's important that the pregnant mother does not subject herself to too much undue stress. It's important that she remain in communication with her healthcare provider so that she can get updated with the data as it comes to us. We will give it to our patients. And it's also important for pregnant women to follow the general guidelines of social distancing, cough hygiene, and hand hygiene.
And I'm sure that applies in bringing home a new baby as well.
Absolutely, even more important.
Well, thanks so much. And once again, that was Dr. Griffith Bowe joining us on the Morning Edition. Dr. Bowe, thanks so much for joining us. We want to continue to share a bit of motivation with you. This morning here is Senior Pastor Dr. Cleon Monroe of Miracle Life Global Outreach Ministries.
My fellow Bahamians, as we face the impact of the economic effects of COVID-19 on our country, I want to assure you that we face a great threat. But in the same breath, I want to remind you that we serve an even greater God. We have a tendency of looking at what the devil is doing and not what God is doing. But rest assured, God is working on our behalf. We are not defenseless in this fight. The devil understands that fear cancels out the authority of faith. This is a great nation. We are a great people, and we shall recover. You will outlast this enemy. We are God's children, and he has given us authority and power over all the powers of the enemy, and no weapon formed against us will prosper. Scripture says that the Lord is faithful, and he is going to establish you and guard you against the evil one. My brothers and sisters, our times are in God's hands, and nothing can overtake us apart from his permission. We must maintain an unshakable faith and belief that God has everything under control, and nothing will harm you beyond his plan, because we are constantly moving under the shadow of the Almighty. Anything that's demon attacked, misaligned, out of place in your life, God will bring your life into divine alignment with his will. The Lord told me to tell you today that this is a season of birthing, and you cannot have birthing without discomfort. You must understand that too many times we get mixed up and confused because we don't know how to differentiate the difference between heaven's contractions and a demonic attack. My brothers and sisters, you must understand that when drought, uncertainty, societal change happens in our life, it's because heaven is getting ready to birth out the next agent of change. I believe that under these same circumstances, God is going to bless your life. Get ready, because shift is coming to your life.
Self-isolation means taking simple steps to avoid close contact with other people as much as possible, as you would with the seasonal flu. If you've been in close contact with somebody confirmed with COVID-19 or suspect that you have it, self-isolate for 14 days. You can self-isolate by staying indoors and away from family for 14 days. Choose a well-ventilated room with a closed door. Household members should stay in a different room, or if that is not possible, maintain a distance of at least 3 feet. Use a sealed waste basket and double bag your waste before disposal. Limit movement in your house. Stay in your assigned space away from the rest of the household. The caretaker will bring food and anything else you need. Use separate cookery and cutlery. Use a separate bathroom and clean it regularly. Use separate towels, separate cleaning linens, and clothing. If you are in need of care by household members, limit the number of caregivers. Assign one person who is in good health and has minimum risk conditions. Most importantly, remember, do not invite others over. Should you or anyone you know feel that you've been exposed to the coronavirus, contact the COVID-19 hotline at the Ministry of Health immediately. To reach us, call 376-9350, 376-9387, 300-2619, or our 24-hour hotline at 502-7382. For more information, visit covid19.gov.bs.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Ministry of Health and this television station.
Public service announcement is brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
The coronavirus has struck all around the world, and to some degree it's bringing the world to a stop. But that doesn't mean that your education has to stop. The Ministry of Education is making available to you learning through virtual learning platform. So go to the ministry's website, ministryofeducationbahamas.com, and go on the button that says virtual learning and register today to participate in virtual learning. We will do our best to provide you an opportunity to continue your education. We only encourage you to make sure that you're disciplined and orderly as you go about ensuring that you take full advantage of this opportunity. Thank you very much.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, your hottest place on the planet for rims, tints, tires, and auto sales. We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Track Lights, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires, cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king. Blessed luck. That's how God fathers.
Well, it's now time to take a look at traffic, and for that, we throw it to our Lloyd Allen.
The traffic report is sponsored by Bahamas First. First in insurance. Today, tomorrow.
So, of course, what you're looking at is the major intersection of the Independence Highway and Robinson Road leading into Prince Charles Drive area. Good morning, Makusha, and good morning, Bahamas. Again, in this area, what I've observed anecdotally is that fewer persons are on the streets, even on our route from the station to the site. Notice at several of the major food grocery stores, fewer persons are there. Fewer persons coming out on obviously that message of social distancing, staying indoors, and obeying those orders coming in from the government, now setting in. And hopefully this should spell good news for our health officials as we continue to fight this epidemic of COVID-19. Also this morning, joining me is from the Royal Bahamas Police Force Traffic Division, Cresenia Johnson. Of course, we're still observing that social distancing. She's going to be talking this morning about overnight traffic as well as some peak periods during the 24-hour curfew and some advice for the motoring public. Good morning, Officer Johnson.
Well, a pleasant good morning to you and a pleasant good morning, Bahamas. Yes, coming out of the night period, we have had 3 accidents involving damages and 1 accident involving minor injury. At this time, we still have 10 persons who are hospitalized as a result of being involved in a traffic accident. And as you've mentioned about the peak times, so far we've seen during this period, we've seen accidents that involve injury. There's been an increase in those accidents. And for example, we had vehicle that turned over here at this intersection the earlier part of last week involving some officers, and then after a short while after that, we've had another accident that occurred on Marquis Street and Shirley Street. Another vehicle overturned. In addition to that, we also had a vehicle that crashed right further up the road from here into a wall, and another vehicle that crashed down at the lamp pole. So yes, drivers, yes, persons who have to traverse the streets, we need you to be careful as you do so. You want to get those essentials out in time, yes. We observe that, however, as it pertains to persons who can avoid during that time being on the street, please do not be on the street. We know that during that time, everybody is still thinking or still in the mindset of let's get off the road at 9 o'clock p.m. But we have to be mindful of the fact that it's a 24-hour curfew, You do what you need to do and get off the street, okay? Try to drive to arrive alive. Try to drive not to end up being hospitalized. And so this is what I really want to admonish the motoring public as much as possible. If you don't have to be on the streets, driving at high rates of speed, doing all these different activities that are not called for, please do not do so.
And of course, some good news coming in from officials. Again, you're reminded persons over the age of 75 are reminded to work from home. If you're between the ages of 65 to 74, again, you should be working from home. Every home by now should have selected a designated shopper. And of course, we know that government is expected in short order to provide a schedule when persons can go out and shop. Pharmacies, again, are operational from 9 to 1, and other pool and business-related services on the weekend. And, of course, as these measures continue to now become a bit more specific, this is now honing into the public persons now heeding that warning and staying indoors and only coming out if need be. This is good news. As health officials say, the least amount of people on the road, the better it is for them to actually analyze their figures and to really target those who are truly impacted by COVID-19. Again, we're reporting from the foot of Independence Highway. I'm joined by Officer Johnson and my team, Ashley and Rodney. They've been doing a phenomenal job throughout this whole situation, and I definitely want to commend them. Thank you so much, Makushla. Back to you and Mr. Charles Fisher there in studio.
Thanks a lot, Lloyd. They're being safe. Well, it's that time of the morning once again downtown. Natasha Brown joining us in studio. Natasha, we've been hearing a lot of voices in our ears as we are home. The fridge are calling us, come eat this, come eat that. And people are just putting on those weight over the last few days.
Good morning to all. Yes, Fisher, that is true. And one way we can fight that is you've got to exercise. And you want to be consistent with the time you exercise. Don't do it 7 this morning and then tomorrow you do it at 3. So you want to be consistent so you know that this is what I am going to do regardless of what's happening while I'm at home.
So describe us, what do you have here this morning? Look like some plate that we just had dinner on. What are we using here this morning?
Actually, these are gliding discs. If you don't happen to have gliding discs, I recommend that you can use the paper plates, or you can see I have towels. So let's get started. What you want to do, you want to make sure your area is sanitized, so we want to stay in compliance with everything that's happening with COVID-19. And to get started, place your hands neatly on the floor where it's going to sustain you. And we just want to go into a running motion right here. Make sure you are comfortable. Make sure you're allowing the knees to come all the way underneath because it's engaging your core. So once you get this and you're comfortable, go ahead with a steady pace. We're going to do 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now for the advance, let's go ahead and pull the knees in together. Pull, keeping the core nice and tight, and you're back. Now, you can go into singles and then doubles. Singles, double. One more time, bring it in. Good job. Now, let's take it to where we're standing, and we're going to go into a reverse lunge. Again, you want to keep the body nice and erect and making sure you're comfortable as you sit or glide back into your lunge. And 4 more. Let's do 3. Let's do 2. And final 1 right here. And there you have it.
Easy, nice workout this morning. And once again, you can go back on our Facebook page and watch this entire routine. Now, what's in store for tomorrow? What can persons get ready to get out?
My favorite set of people, recycled teenagers. Yeah. And so basically, you don't need anything other than you, your open mind, your energy, and the right attitude, and we're good to go.
And with the restriction now on going out and exercise, you want to encourage persons to do some running in the house, do some exercise as well.
Definitely. And if you've got our phones accommodating everything right now, so put on for a minute, jog on the spot, do some jumping jacks. Cardio endurance training will always save you at the end of the day.
Thanks a lot, Downtown Natasha Brown. Once again, you can go on our Facebook page and watch the entire routine. But coming up next, just what folks are doing at home to pass the time during the lockdown.
This public service announcement is brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
The Ministry of Education, in conjunction with the Ministry of Health, advises students, teachers, administrators, and staff to adhere to the following steps in an effort to minimize the risk of COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus. Step 1. Be sure to wash hands before and after you eat, after using the bathroom, touching money, shaking hands, or emptying the trash. You may also use hand sanitizers throughout the day. Frequently wash hands with soap and water for 20 seconds and rinse with clean water. Dry hands with clean paper towels. Step 2. Cough or sneeze into your elbow or sleeve and not into your hands or into the ear. Or cover your nose or mouth with a tissue. Immediately dispose of the tissue into the trash. Be sure to wash your hands thoroughly afterwards. Step 3. Do not drink from the same cans, bottles, or cups of other persons. Do not share eating utensils, such as forks and spoons. Do not share school supplies, such as pencils or pens. Step 4. Germs can live on many surfaces. Be sure to wipe and disinfect desks, school supplies, railings, and other surfaces that are regularly touched by others. Step 5. Avoid close contact with anyone who is coughing and sneezing. Let's do what we can to help minimize the risk of the coronavirus.
This public service announcement is brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
It is time for our morning forecast, and outside of our studios, we're under partly sunny skies with a temperature of 70 degrees, a relative humidity 93%, very rich, and those winds are out of the southwest at 4 miles per hour. The barometric pressure, 1,015.7 millibars, that's 29.99 inches, and it is steady. Temperatures around the islands this morning in Marsh Harbor, 71 degrees, Greenville Key at 73, Freeport, Grand Bahamas, 73 degrees, in the Berry Islands, 71, 74 degrees in Allenstown, Bimini, in Harper Island, 71. Also Rock Sound, Eleuthera, Otterstown, Cadallen, Staniel Key, Kemps Bay, and Fresh Creek in Central Andrews, all at 71 degrees. In San Salvador and Rum Key, 71s as well. We get a little warmer as we take you into Ragged Island at 74 degrees. Clarencetown, Long Island, Crooked Island, 74. 75 in Betsy Bay, Maguana, Acklands at 75. Matchetown and Agua, 76 degrees. And the Turks and Caicos Islands at 77 degrees. And just in case there's some outbound flights for humanitarian reasons today, well, here's some high and low temperatures you're likely to find at selected cities.
When I was but a young boy, Mama used to say, learn all you can, boy, prepare for rainy day. Please stay in school, boy, hear what the teachers say. This poem from the Royal Reader will help you on your way. If you strive to nail a right, boy, hit it on the head. Right with all your might, boy, while the iron is
And that's going to do it for your travel forecast. Now for your boating forecast for today in the northwestern islands. We have a cold front that's heading this way, a weak one, by the way. The winds are south to southwest ahead of that front. Speeds around 10 to 15 knots. The wave fights 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. Low tide takes place this morning at 7:35. You can expect a high tide at 1:22 in the afternoon. In the central and southeastern islands, southeast winds 10 to 15 knots. Wave fights 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. And our satellite picture showing some high-level clouds already being advected over the northwest Bahamas ahead of that cold front. And the front itself is now approaching Lake Okeechobee. We'll get into the northwest Bahamas tomorrow morning, pushing through the capital during the early afternoon hours. And it's a very good chance of some showers taking place along that front boundary by 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. Ahead of that pretty nice day, as that high pressure continues to slide towards the east, and you will see those winds gradually shifting towards the south and then to southwest. Behind the front, they will swing out of the northwest and quickly roll around towards the northeast by tomorrow afternoon. Mostly sunny and warm today with a high temperature of 85 degrees. Tonight we're looking at clear skies again. A bit warmer, but still on the mild side, with your low temperature getting down to 73 degrees. And extended weather forecast, showers in the forecast, particularly during the early afternoon tomorrow as that front pushes through. Things clearing up by Thursday, and heading into the weekend, we're looking at an abundance of sunshine. But most significantly, those temperatures drop below the 80-degree mark on Thursday, and that should hold up right into Friday with a slight warming trend beginning on Saturday. And that should hold into the low 80s during the early part of next week. Makisha?
Oh, thanks, Basil. It's now about that time to look in on what some of you are doing at home under the heavy COVID-19 atmosphere.
I'm in the living room, I'm watching TV. Her and her friends, they're in the room playing. Out of nowhere, I hear a loud bang. Bang! Little girl start crying. Ah! Ah! I come in the room, right? All the girls are standing around her. They all standing around her. One girl's on her knee looking at her face to face. This one almost made me laugh. When I came in the room, the girl looked at me. She's like, But I can't laugh because I'm in daddy mode. I got to figure out what happened. So I go to my daughter. It's her room. She's responsible. I said, Heaven, come here. Come here. It's your room. You're responsible. What happened? Daddy! She said, we got monsters, Daddy. There's a bunch of monsters in here. The prince came out, told us to get in the castle. The castle was at the top of the bunk bed. When we got up there, it was too many people in the castle. So, somebody had to go. We took a vote, she lost, I kicked her off. Wait, what?
My name is David. I am a child of the king. You come with a shield and sword, but I come by the name of the Lord.
I'm on the front line. Please listen. We are healthcare providers, and you put yourself and us at risk when you don't listen. Stay indoors. Listen to the parties. Together, we can defeat COVID-19 because we are overcomers. Listen and choose wisely. The decision you make can determine our...
The partner vaped them. Vaped them partner. Going on our call now. Gotta protect yourself, you know. And good Lord go with us and guide us and keep us safe. Amen.
Once again, a reminder to send your videos, pictures showing how you are passing the time in the government-imposed lockdown, or if you want to salute those on the front line. The number, 477-0546. And we would like to clear up this diplomatic position before leaving. We noted the ambassador to the Kingdom of Belgium and head of mission at the European Union, Her Excellency Maria O'Brien, as designate. Her Excellency is a confirmed appointed ambassador. That wraps up the morning edition. Once again, I'm Akush Lapinder. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Achieving goals may seem hard, boy, but don't give up the fight. Keep hammering away, boy, you're sure to get it right. Resist peer pressure, boy, you don't have to be like the boys. Explore your own horizon, it's bound to bring you joy. And try the nail right, boys.
You're watching the ZNS Network, the People's Station.